travelers, and welcome to today's story titled A Journey into the Unknown. We hope you enjoy it, but before we continue, don't forget to support us by subscribing to your channel and activating the bell to receive all the new stories and adventures. If you enjoy this story, please press the like button and share your thoughts with us in the comments. Your support helps us bring more exciting stories to you. Now, get ready and listen to the details of this intriguing story. We wish you a pleasant listening experience. Once upon a time, in a faraway city, life was quiet and repetitive. People there lived simple lives, as if they were condemned to eternal repetition. Chris, a young man in his 20s, lived in this city. He loved solitude and peace, and he preferred not to interact with others. But his life began to change that day when he received a mysterious message. Chris worked in the city's library, spending most of his time among books, reading and searching for ideas that might take him out of the monotony of daily life. One day, as he was folding the page of his favorite book, he felt something strange. There was a small piece of paper lying between the pages of the book. It was a white sheet with no signature or name, just words written in elegant handwriting. Everything begins when you start searching. Do not hesitate to take the first step. In that moment, you will discover that life is not as you thought. Chris didn't know what to do with the message. There was something mysterious, something that made him feel that this message could change everything in his life. He decided to follow the instructions despite his doubts and hesitations. The next day, he left his job at the library and carried his bag, heading toward an unknown destination. Chris started walking through the narrow streets of the city that he had never visited before. The streets were quiet, the buildings were old, as if time had stopped here. He didn't know where to go, but he felt that each step brought him closer to the answer to the puzzle he was starting to unravel. After hours of walking, he reached a large gate, which was tightly closed, with no signs indicating its contents. Then, he felt something strange. A soft voice whispered in his ear, as if it was coming from behind the walls. "You're close. Come closer." Chris looked up to find a small wooden door in front of him. It was almost invisible, hidden between the grasses and trees growing beside it. When he gently pushed the door, he found himself in another place, a place he had never imagined. The place was an oasis in the middle of the desert, surrounded by sand dunes on all sides. The air was thick with heat, and the wind was blowing sand around him. But in the center of this barren land was a small lake reflecting the sunlight, giving the place a magical beauty. Chris felt something strange in this place, as if time itself was changing here. He approached the lake, where he saw something strange floating on the water's surface. It was a small wooden box adorned with ancient carvings. He gently picked it up and opened it to find an old map and papers written in a strange script. The moment he touched the map, he felt something immense inside him, as if a spirit had entered him. Images began to appear in his mind, as if the place before him had become a part of his dream. The map showed many places, unknown regions, as if they represented a journey he had to take to discover ancient secrets. Chris began to follow the path marked on the map, and the more he progressed, the more strange and unfamiliar places he discovered. There were ancient temples, legendary creatures, and puzzles to be solved in order to reach the final destination. During this journey, he met different people, some of whom were waiting for someone like him, while others were trying to stop him at any cost. In those tense moments, Chris began to change. He became braver and more prepared to face the unknown. He knew that this journey could change him forever, but he felt he could not go back. The life he had known was over, and this was the beginning of a new life. And as he neared the end, he discovered that what he had been searching for was not just ancient secrets or a lost map, but he had been searching for himself, for his true identity. He knew that in the end, he would have to face his own choices, and that he might have to make decisions that would affect the fate of the world. But was he ready to face the truth? Would he find the answer he had been searching for? The journey was still ongoing, and before Chris were many unknowns to uncover in this mysterious world. Chris continued his journey, and with each passing day, new aspects of the world he had entered were revealed to him. Over time, he began to realize that this journey was not just an ordinary adventure, but a test of his ability to face himself and his fears. One day, as he walked through dense forests on the map, he felt something strange. The air was suffocating, and the trees were so giant that they blocked the light from the sky. The darkness grew, and it seemed that with each step he took, he was heading to an even more mysterious place. Suddenly, another person appeared before him. It was an old man with a long beard and white hair, dressed in strange clothes. Chris looked at him with questioning eyes, his heart beating faster. The man spoke in a calm yet powerful voice. "You have been waiting for me, haven't you?" Chris was surprised, but before he could respond, the man continued, "You are not here by accident. Chris, you were chosen for this role a long time ago." Chris tried to understand what the man meant, but his mind was distracted. He asked, "What do you mean? Why me?" The man smiled and said, "You started this journey without knowing its purpose. But now, it's time to learn the truth. A great test lies ahead of you. If you are ready, we will begin by traveling to the past, where you will discover everything." After a moment of hesitation, Chris agreed, knowing that he had no other choice. He decided to continue the journey, no matter the challenges that lay ahead. The man took Chris's hand, and together they began walking through the dense forest. While the darkness fell around them, Chris felt a sudden calmness wash over him, as if this man knew more than he appeared to. For several hours of walking, they arrived at a massive cave in the mountain, its entrance almost hidden among the rocks and plants. The man said, "Here, you will find what you are looking for. This cave is the gateway to the past, where the secret of your journey lies. Do not be afraid, for the closer you get to the truth, the greater the challenges will be." They entered the cave, and Chris began to see strange things, drawings on the walls and people from different eras. There were ancient symbols indicating that this place had been connected to a long history of mysterious secrets. The man said, "These drawings tell an old story, a story about a great secret that has been hidden for thousands of years. Now, you must complete what your ancestors started." As time passed, Chris began to feel that he was becoming part of this ancient story, as if every step he took inside the cave was bringing him closer to answers to questions he had always wondered about. He discovered that his life was strangely linked to events that had occurred long ago. Then came the moment of confrontation when they reached a large room inside the cave. In the center was an ancient stone engraved with many mysterious symbols. The man said, "This is the key, Chris. You can now use it to reach the truth you are searching for. But you must choose carefully." Chris looked at the stone, then at the man, who was watching him with eyes full of wisdom. His heart raced. This moment was a turning point in his journey. If he chose the right path, he would discover everything. If he chose the wrong one, he might lose everything. After a moment of thought, Chris placed his hand on the stone. He felt something strange pass through him, as if the entire world had turned into something different. The rocks began to shake, and the cave lit up with dazzling lights. A blurry image appeared before him, showing a distant place. He saw himself in an unknown place, with people he didn't recognize, but they were carrying the same markings he had seen on the map. These were visions of part of the past, where the journey had started thousands of years ago, and Chris was the one who would complete what his ancestors had begun. At that moment, Chris realized that he was part of something much bigger than he had imagined. His journey was not just an individual adventure. It was an extension of a long legacy of secrets and knowledge that had been hidden from everyone. He was the one who would rediscover those secrets. But most importantly, he had learned something crucial on this journey. The truth doesn't come easily, and you must be prepared to pay the price to discover it. Chris took a deep breath, ready to continue his journey, determined to complete what he had started, no matter the challenges. This was a new beginning, a beginning to understand himself and the world around him. Chris continued his journey after discovering the secret of the ancient stone. With every step, the sky seemed clearer, as if the clouds were moving away from the path he was taking. After uncovering the past, he had a strong feeling that he was on the verge of something greater than just an individual adventure. As he continued on his way, he began to see more of the places that had appeared in his vision inside the cave. It felt as though the world was connecting around him, and everything was starting to make more sense. Yet, he knew that something important awaited him at the end. He had to uncover the full truth and understand how it would affect his destiny. The next day, Chris reached a remote area between the mountains where an old castle stood, surrounded by massive walls. The castle was dark, as if it had been abandoned for a long time. He approached cautiously toward the entrance, and inside, he was about to face a final test. When he entered the castle, Chris felt that the place was filled with ancient memories, and that it was testing him in some way. In the middle of the great hall, there was a massive statue of a man holding a map in his hand. The statue resembled the person Chris had seen in his vision inside the cave. The map that Chris was carrying matched exactly the map held by the statue. You've reached the end. Chris, came the voice of the old man who had accompanied him. On his journey, he suddenly appeared before him as if time had stopped. This is the moment you've been waiting for. Chris looked at the man in confusion, then asked, "What should I do now?" The man smiled and said, "You've reached the crossroads. What you see before you is not just a stone or a map. This is the truth that has been hidden for thousands of years. But there is only one choice you must make." Chris shook his head and said, "What choice? If you wish to keep these secrets and store them as they are, you can leave them here. The world will remain as it is. But if you are ready for change, and if you are willing to bear the burden, you can open this door and discover the truth behind everything." Chris felt confused. He knew that this decision would change his life forever. But he had learned so much during his journey. He had discovered things about himself and the world around him. He knew he had the ability to face any challenge. With steady steps, Chris approached the door that had been closed in front of the statue and thought about the choices before him. Then he turned the knob, opened the door, and entered into a dark room. He was in the heart of the place where all the secrets lay. When he entered, he felt the cold air brush his face, and a faint light glowed from the corner of the room. In the center, there was an ancient book, filled with the knowledge that had been hidden from the world. The book was the key to everything. On its pages were written the ancient truths that shaped the world. And the moment Chris touched the book, the lights in the castle began to glow, and everything around him started to change. The ancient secrets flowed into his mind as if they had been part of him all along. But the truth was too great to be carried by one person alone. In that moment, Chris understood that he was part of an ongoing process and that he had to share this knowledge with the world. If he kept it to himself, it could lead to disaster. But if he used it wisely, he could help improve the world he lived in. Chris left the castle carrying the book with him. He knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy, but his decision had been made. He would face new challenges, but he was ready for them now. He had become the person who could lead others to the truth. And in the end, he knew that this journey was the beginning of something much bigger than just uncovering ancient secrets. He returned to his life, but he was no longer the same. He had become a man more aware of the reality of the world and more prepared to share this truth with those around him. The journey had ended, but its impact would stay with him forever. Chris had discovered that the journey never truly ends. It continues with every new step we take in life, and so ends the story of Chris. The journey he began was more than just an adventure. It was a path to discovering himself and the world around him, and its echoes would continue through the generations to come.